Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by Pilma. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And this week, we have the pleasure and honor of having Lee Coleman with Hughes Coleman out of Kentucky and all other parts of the country. I think he owns firms in other parts of the country, but we'll find out. So, Lee, you've been an innovator. I mean, you've helped a lot of other lawyers across the country with the stuff that you're doing with your LMA and different things. So it's an honor for me to have you here because I've always looked at you as a leader in the field.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into law and how'd you get into PI and all that kind of stuff? Just tell me how you got into it.
I think I probably fall in the majority of people that I got where I am without really any pre-planning or grand scheme. And when I finished undergraduate school, I had taken the bar exam, the LSAT, because my mother thought I should be a corporate lawyer for Ashland Oil. I grew up in Ashland, Kentucky, and she was at the club with all those people. And so then when I graduated at University of Kentucky in 1978, turns out it wasn't a great time to be looking for a job when you had a strong, B+ average out of, University of Kentucky business degree. So instead of being an assistant manager at a gas station service mart, I decided I would follow my mom's advice and go to law school. And then start early law career, just ended up, after a few years of doing this, that, and the other, ended up sharing offices with my current partner, Marshall Hughes, when he had his own private PI practice, had done it for years. And then over just about 3 or 4 years, he and I became partners and eventually became equal partners, but, wasn't any pre-plan to it. It's just the way it worked out for me.
And so it's interesting that your mother wanted you to go to work for the corporations, and now you sue a lot of corporations.
Yeah, we do. I mean, my dad was the general manager of one of the largest employers in Ashland, Kentucky, and a steel company. When he ran it, there were 5,400 people there, and he was an esteemed businessman in the community, was for all of his life. But my dad was probably the least snobbish person I ever knew. He was just a hard worker that was smart and, climbed the ladder because he worked hard and loved what he did. So he never preached to me, you got to work for the company or anything like that. But my mother, being the general manager's wife, that's what seemed right to her. Had I come out of law school and gone to work for Ashland Oil, I might have loved it. I don't know. I just never ended up doing it. Yeah. So I didn't love law school, so I didn't come out in the top 10% of the class, which is what you had to do to get a job for one of those places. And as it turns out today, I'm kind of glad I didn't. Who knows what would happen. I'm happy where I am. So.
Absolutely. I agree. I was one of those guys too. I went to I didn't go to a school, as big as Kentucky. I went to Campbell University, had about 2,000 students.
Right.
And by the way, I guess you're a Kentucky fan then. Y'all whipped up on Florida Gators the other night.
Well, if we can end the season right now, I'll take it and go home because we're getting ready to play Georgia and all those big boys. And I'm afraid we'll probably get our whipping like we usually do. But, hey, we're smiling for right now.
Well, I'm a big UNC fan and Tar Heels, and we just never had a football team. So our big deal was wait the basketball season. But
yeah, the year I graduated from University of Kentucky, they won the SEC, except they were disqualified for a recruiting violation. I think they were 10-1 that year, 6th in the country, and they've never been that good since. So, but they didn't get any awards because they were on probation. So, but maybe this will be the year.
So, what kind of law do you like to practice the most?
These days I spend most of my time doing what, everybody would consider management, but I still get involved in a lot of the cases. I cut my teeth on motor vehicle cases and really like those. I love doing workers' comp, but in Kentucky, they pretty much legislated that out. You can't make a living at it. There's still some lawyers that do it, but legislated that away. There was a number of years where I did tons of Social Security disability hearings and loved that. That's the best, doing those hearings for those people who really need it.
Yeah.
That was probably the most immediate reward you could ever get. But, the Social Security Administration doesn't really want lawyers involved in that anymore. They make it to where you can't make a living at it anyway. So at least that's my opinion. And we still do some of those cases, but not many. And so I'm not really that involved in it. But I like premises liability cases. I like the motor vehicle cases, and I do some work in our nursing home injury cases. Those are pretty sad, but I can't say there's any one type of case. It's just I've done personal injury, for now going on 35 years. So it's about all I know anymore, and I kind of like all of it.
So what year was it that you and Hughes went together and formed your partnership?
So we got together in 1985, August of 1985, after he had retired. He was very successful early on, and I think at age 44, he figured out he could retire, had enough money, and then he retired. And I think he figured out that being retired and playing full-time in Florida was more expensive than being working full-time in Kentucky. For whatever the reason, I've never pinned him down on that. But he decided to come back practicing. So we just started out sharing offices. I was still a young lawyer, and just sharing offices, covered some stuff for him. He had a big practice when he retired, and he came back, and he'd just been gone a year, and his clients didn't even know he'd retired for the most part. So we just started out an office sharing agreement. And then honestly, we started the partnership, a real partnership, when he wanted to start advertising on TV, because we had some other firms. He had done personal injury for his whole career, and he lost out on a case that somebody he thought was going to hire him was laying up in a hospital bed, and saw an ad on TV from a blue blood law firm here in town about their community, whatever they were supporting, and that client decided to call that law firm somebody Marshall didn't have good feelings for, because he was on the other side of them all the time. So he decided, hell, if they're going to do it, then I'm going to do it too. And that was 1987, and it was all legal. So we started our partnership in 1987, and went on TV. We had been sharing stuff up until that point. So we started on TV. First in our town here, small town Bowling Green, Kentucky. We started in late 1987 on TV, and quite honestly, we thought we were really good. It turns out we were just first. When you're first, it's everybody's calling you, but it soon became pretty competitive. And now, all these years later, I guess what is this? 34 years later, it's it's competitive everywhere. The Bowling Green, Kentucky, our little town. We're now in Nashville and other places, but they're all competitive anymore.
Absolutely. So, how many lawyers? So you started back in '87 with you and Mr. Hughes, and now how many lawyers and staff have you got now?
I think the current number is 38 or 39 lawyers, and I think we're at 185 total people, full-timers. We have some part-timers. We have kept most of our employees through COVID. It's been tough, but we've kept most of our employees through COVID, and I've had some people leave because they could go anywhere now. Once you can work remotely, then people can leave a lot easier, and we've seen some of that. And then we are in basically 5 TV markets, which is Louisville, Lexington, and Bowling Green, Kentucky, and then Nashville, Tennessee. And in those cities and these areas, I think we have 10 offices total. There's some offices in the Nashville, surrounding Nashville, 2 in Louisville, 1 in Lexington, another, in town in between in Kentucky. And then we have 4 offices in the Nashville area, in the Nashville suburbs, and then the main Nashville office. And then about 10 years ago, we bought into a firm, Ron Bell's firm in New Mexico, and we've been out there since, I guess, 2008.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you see, let me ask you this, there's different ways to grow. And you've done both of them with advertising, marketing, doing a good job, all that thing. But also you went out and bought into another firm. Do you think, I don't see a lot of, I mean, I guess that's John Morgan. I don't know how he does it. Does he go out and buy other firms? I mean, that's what I hear, but I don't know if he just starts up. But I'm seeing more and more of that. Jacoby and Myers, they go out and buy firms. The guy up in New York.
Ken, I don't really know anything directly on any of that stuff. I've heard some people say, well, here's what they think Morgan's doing. I mean, I knew he's in Kentucky. He grew up in Kentucky. I mean, he was a Kentucky native. It was clear to me a long time before he came to Kentucky that he was going to come here. He wanted to, and pretty clear he wants to be everywhere. So, that's fact of life in Kentucky and Tennessee. We deal with that. But there's not much of buying other law firms. It is tough. I mean, without going through everything we've gone through in New Mexico, the distance alone makes it difficult. The culture is different. Having said that, if anybody wanted to buy into another firm, I'd say buy into somebody close to you would be the number one lesson I learned there, that if you're going to try to go someplace remote, it's tough. And I know a few lawyers that to me are good lawyers that have tried to do something pretty far away from where they live. And, I haven't really heard any resounding success stories from that. There may be one, I just don't know of it. And the lawyers who seem to just start from a central point and expand out beyond that, if you're in maybe Atlanta and you get going great in Atlanta, well, then, what's the next closest? Maybe you go to Augusta, maybe you go to, Macon, Georgia. I don't know, but that seems to me to be the better use of your time and money from what I've seen.
Yeah. And I think, so how do you know when it's time to go to another market? Because you've had 35 years of doing this. And I get this question all the time, Lee, do I need to saturate the market I'm in before I go to another market? And I felt like lawyers go too quick to try to spread out across the state before they really own the market they were in. I don't know.
Yeah, looking back on it, we could have done a lot more. I mean, we started in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which, at the time there's 80,000 people in our county, 50 in the city. And then we're an hour from Nashville. So Nashville, if we wanted to be big, was a lot more of opportunity. And it now is our biggest practice market. But looking back on it, we could have done a lot more in Bowling Green, this small town, just with what I see now, what I think is out there now. I think we could have done a lot more than we did. But just from a numbers, in terms of making money and, pushing big cases, things like that. But in terms of case volume, there's just no way that, Bowling Green can ever produce the number of cases Nashville, Tennessee can. It's just never going to happen. So, yeah, if you're in a small market and you got a chance to go to a big market, it's a big risk, but, there's a lot more upside there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I grew up in a town of 10,000 people.
Right.
And I lived about 45 minutes from Raleigh, the capital. And one of my mentors said, if you go to try to be a big lawyer, a big time lawyer, you better go up to Raleigh for a lot of reasons. When I tried to keep it in Dunn, and even though I was advertising on TV and I had satellite office in Raleigh, I couldn't keep the lawyers there because there was nothing there for them. They wanted, and I understand that, they're young professionals and we were a dry county, and there was nothing to do. And so, they had to drive 45 minutes to Raleigh and so I would get them trained. And then after about a year, they'd move on to another firm in Raleigh or Charlotte, Wilmington. And I understood that. And I finally after about 5 years, I just moved my headquarters up to Raleigh, and that made all the difference. We kept the lawyers, after that, because the money was good. They didn't have any social life, and there's more to life than just making money. You got, they want to get married and have children, and
right.
The pickings weren't that great in my hometown, to be honest with you, for professional women. They just won't.
Well, and we had seen before firms out of Louisville would try to open up an office in Bowling Green, and they wouldn't really commit to it and, try to save money on it. And there are none of those that are still here. Now, Morgan has come in doing what he does and spent a lot of money and built a big practice. So I would agree that if you're going to go someplace, you got to commit to it.
Yeah, I agree. So if you could go back when you and Mr. Hughes got together, about when you started advertising, What would you give yourself any different advice?
Yeah, well, here to me, the big difference, Ken, is, literally you and I, we learned to practice law before the internet.
Yeah.
And, I didn't have a mentor. That was not the way Mr. Hughes was wired. He was working his stuff and I could ask him a question, but, I didn't have people I worked with that could show me how to try a case, could show me, what to do, what was out there. And, I just kind of learned along the way by happy accident and, experience. I mean, you just go and figure out one thing at a time. I remember, sitting in motion hour, waiting for my case to be called, listening, to, the motions by the lawyers that had good practices and saying, wow, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. And so I just, if I could go back, I would have told myself, look, find somebody somewhere who will tell you how to do this. If you got to spend every dime in your back pocket to go learn what's out there, go spend it. Because it's just too hard to learn sitting in Bowling Green, Kentucky, getting, Trial Magazine, whatever it was back then. I forget whenever I started taking that. So, just taking that was interesting. But now with everything on the internet and whatever you can, this podcast, others like it, I think it's easier to learn. And you've got things like, National Trial Lawyers, Mass Torts Made Perfect, different things that you can go to and find somebody who will share with you. But I just didn't have any of that. And, fortunately, my partner, Mr. Hughes, had built up a pretty good practice before we started, but it was all the word of mouth. He had 1,000 best buddies here in Bowling Green. That's the way he built his business. So we had that as a starting point. And once we went to TV, then that's where you start getting your cases. But there wasn't anybody that I had as a peer that I could go to, at least not for a long time. So that to me, it'd be find somebody early on that you can share with, reach out, find somebody. Call Ken Hardison and say, Ken, I live in Spartanburg, South Carolina. You know anybody I can talk to, whatever it might be, because there's a lot of people like you and me. We like to talk about it. We might not give up, the secret recipe if there's something we think is great, but just generally how to do this, we share all the time. You and I do kind of similar things there. So that would be the number one thing. But I didn't have anybody like that back then. And had I, who knows, what I might have done. So.
Yeah. Any books that you read in your career that kind of really, like you said, aha, and it was like an aha moment or anything that kind of changed the way you looked at things or did things?
I wouldn't say there's any book that I read that was aha, but I remember reading, Who Moved My Cheese, thinking, okay, I get that. And then Good to Great, that was kind of simple, but kind of makes sense. And then I started reading Western novels, and I remember the line out of a Western novel, there's a good man who knows he's right and keeps on coming is hard to stop. So I remember thinking through that, if you really believe you're right, and you're right, just keep on pushing. And I've done that a lot on stuff we think is right. It might not be working or other people might not agree, but so those, I would say, just that theory, reading that, I hadn't heard it put that way before. And when I heard that, I said, wow, I like that. So, and then now I'd say the one book now that I'm paying the most attention to is probably Nick Rowley's Running with the Bulls. That whole approach, I believe he's hit the nail on the head. A lot of things he puts in there, I've been telling our lawyers for a while, just in different ways, but he seems to get a higher average value case than what I get, but the same approach to handling the cases. I think that's probably the best read I would tell anybody right now.
Well, Lee, you're in a little different, probably market. I don't know what market Crowley's in, but I don't know about Kentucky and Tennessee, but I can tell you in North Carolina, you're not going to get the same verdicts you're going to get in Florida or New York. I can tell you.
I'm not sure about all that. I keep hearing people tell me, oh, you can't get a good verdict in that county. And that's true until somebody gets a huge one. So I think having a good case with good facts, they're rare. And when they go to trial with good lawyers who take the time, I'm not sure. I believe there's any county where you can't get a good verdict. Now, if you want to go into some rural county in South Carolina, Virginia, or wherever, and take a little piddly car wreck case against against some citizen with your client with a hurt back and not good medical testimony, I mean, the odds are against you on those cases. We've all seen that. So I think the conservative mantra that's out there all the time about crazy lawsuits, that's obviously had an effect. But I just see good results on good cases by lawyers who take the time to get them ready and have a good case. So to me, we're preaching to our lawyers, if you've got a good case and you believe in it, work it up and don't be scared of the trial. I think people are scared of trials because they try so many bad cases. I remember trying cases early on, and I tried some really dogs because you get up. It used to be easy to get to trial, Ken. If I want to go to trial, just tell the judge, yeah, judge, I want to try the case. Okay, we'll set a trial. And it was just not hard. And now you have to have, 3 letters from your congressman allowing you to have a jury trial, it seems like. So, but because it was easy to get to trial, I mean, I've tried some cases that I did well on, but I remember trying some that I showed up and said, I have no way of winning this case. And I was right. But you end up, trying the case. Now, it's still good experience, but I learned, you could learn. My conclusion was I can learn stuff trying good cases as well as bad cases. So I tried to avoid trying bad cases, but we did. And but now watching lawyers who really get ready, got some good friends who have really good trial practices. They get their cases ready, and if they got a good case, they don't worry about well, this county or that county or whatever. Now I do think you can have judges who can hurt your case. Judges with rulings and conservative, and you've always got to take that in mind. But honestly, most judges that I remember going in front of and that we see anymore, if you've got a good case and you've worked it, and you're not showing up last minute asking for this change or this extension or that extension, the judge is usually not your problem. It's more often the lawyer handling the case is the problem because they're not ready, and the judges just don't have much tolerance for somebody who's wanting to take 2 or 3 days of jury trial time and just come in there and wing it. I mean, that's valuable real estate for the judges, and you want to take it up on, case you haven't worked on. So if you got a good case, work it, get it ready. And, we're seeing good results. I mean, not just on our cases, but my friends who are trying cases.
That's great. So have y'all, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of firms out there are raising their threshold, and we talked about bad cases. I call them dogs with fleas, and some of them got more fleas than others. But I mean, have you started referring those out, or are you still handling them in-house? We call them the soft tissue, missed cases. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we have not really changed our threshold. Same thing. We just try to work hard on the front end to identify the clients who are going to treat for their injuries. And, if they treat 3 months, 4 months, and they're okay, then we're not going to try to pretend they're not okay. We're not going to try to go to court and say our client's got a horrible injury if they're healed up. But, if they still have problems, we just try to make sure they get the medical treatment they need, and then just see. But there is going to be some percentage of cases you're going to take where turns out, something's not the way you thought it was. Your client won't help you with the case. To me, it's the McDonald's drive-through society. Everybody expects everything quick, and telling a client, well, you got to go to your doctor's appointment, and we're going to have to file this motion, and we can get your case to trial in about 1.5 years. And they want their money, today, because that's what they're used to. So you have to deal with all those things, and there's no great answer. But I don't think it's any different now than it's been before about, if a case is not good, you're not going to do much with it. But I do believe the insurance companies and their lawyers have probably won the issue of what is a case worth if somebody gets in a wreck and treats for a month or 2 or 3 and then is okay. Lawyers, when I started my career, if I had one of those cases and there was $8,000 in medical bills and, in a month or 2 they were okay, and our limits in Kentucky were $25,000, I could get that, quite often. But they tried a lot of those cases, and if you're okay and there's no long-term injuries, then the juries, for the most part, aren't going to give you money. And so that's what those cases are worth. So, my biggest factor whenever I'm talking to our lawyers here about trying the case is, is our client okay now? I learned I didn't ever want to be in front of a jury saying, here's my client, Mrs. Jones. She used to be hurt. Juries just don't care about that. If they're not hurt, having problems when you show up for trial, you're probably not going to do real well. Now, there's exceptions to that, but for the most part, if somebody recovers from their injuries, well, then get the case settled, try to get as much as you can, and don't let the insurance company get away with paying too little. But, you're not going to make a successful career trying cases for people who were hurt for 2 or 3 months and are okay, in my opinion. So we just try to work it that way, and they generally sort themselves out. And occasionally we'll have a client who doesn't agree with us, but we refer some cases out if it's depending on the location and the level of injuries and our caseloads. If our lawyers are full up and we've got some modest low value cases, we'll be more likely to refer those out than if we got lawyers with room to take cases.
So what would be your advice to a young lawyer that's wanting to get into the personal injury or start his own law practice? You got any tidbits, things you would tell them?
Probably, I would say it's probably easier to start a practice now than it's ever been, just because of all the resources out there. I'm not saying it's cheaper, but it's probably easier. But lead companies and different sources of getting clients where you don't have to go on TV and commit to $1 million a year to compete. So I know lawyers who built good firms without ever being on TV. So I'm not the person to ask about that. That's just not how we did it. That came later, but I know it's going on. So, but I'd say, again, find somebody you can share information with, ask questions about, but you can find a lot of that just by reaching out on the internet, going to seminars. You put on seminars, we put on seminars, find something to go to and find people to ask questions. I know firms that have started from little to nothing and have grown pretty rapidly, but they typically are good lawyers. It's not somebody who, just goes out and advertise and won't work the cases. The firms that are growing really work their cases.
Yeah. It's, I agree. I know, you know him too, and they've really grown from like 6 lawyers to 26, but they try cases and they prepare and it's in the Northeast and they get good verdicts. I mean, they get multi-million-dollar verdicts and settlements, and the insurance companies know that they'll go try them, and they know they'll try them good, and it makes a difference.
It does, no question.
Well, that's some sage advice. Well, I appreciate you being on our show, and that if I don't see you no more before the first year, that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas, and things keep going good, and that COVID gets over with, and you can get everybody back, get back to normal. Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate all you do for everybody, Ken. Happy to be part of it. Have a good one.
Take care, my friend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.